In the year 2091, the world was vastly different from what it had once been. Technology had advanced beyond what anyone could have imagined, and yet, for all its progress, there were still things it couldn't fix. It couldn't bring back the dead. It couldn't mend a broken heart. Andrew Harlow had always been a man of routine. A mechanical engineer by trade, he thrived in the structured nature of his work, his mind constantly occupied by the intricacies of machines and circuits. But the one thing that gave his life meaning wasn't the machines he worked on, but the family he returned to every evening, his wife, Lisa, and their two daughters, Emily and Sophie. Everything changed on a cold January night in 2091. Lisa had been driving home from a late meeting when the accident happened. An autonomous delivery drone malfunctioned, crashing directly into her vehicle. The emergency responders arrived too late. In an instant, Andrew's world crumbled. For weeks after the funeral, Andrew struggled. He was a mess of grief, barely able to function. Emily, just 8 years old, and Sophie, only 5, couldn't understand the permanence of their mother's absence. They asked every day when she was coming back. He had no answer for them. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, felt hollow. His daughters needed him, but he couldn't provide the care and attention they deserved. He was drowning in his own sorrow. Andrew knew something had to change. He couldn't go on like this, barely getting through the day, leaving the girls to their own devices and neglecting the home. But how could he juggle the demands of his job and the needs of his daughters without Lisa? One evening, as he absent-mindedly scrolled through his neural interface, an advertisement appeared. Android companions for every need, the future of caregiving. He hesitated for a moment before clicking on the link. The androids on display looked human, too human almost. Their faces were designed to reflect warmth and understanding, their movements fluid and natural. They could cook, clean, care for children, and even simulate emotional support. He browsed through the different models, his mind racing with possibilities. Could this be the answer? A way to keep the house running, to give the girls the care they needed, while he pieced himself back together? The next morning, Andrew made the call. The android arrived 2 weeks later, packaged in a sleek, nondescript box. When the delivery team unpacked her, Andrew was stunned. The model he had chosen was called Eve. She stood at average height, with soft brown hair that framed her face, gentle green eyes, and a warm smile. She wore simple, modest clothing, and if Andrew hadn't known she was an android, he might have mistaken her for a real person. Eve was programmed to be nurturing, attentive, and patient, all the qualities Andrew needed for his daughters. "Good morning, Mr. Harlow," Eve greeted him as soon as she powered on. Her voice was calm and reassuring, with a musical cadence that was neither too robotic nor overly emotional. "Please introduce me to your daughters." Emily and Sophie were initially shy around Eve, unsure of what to make of her. But children are resilient, adaptable. Within days, they warmed to her. Eve knew exactly how to comfort them, how to distract them from their sadness, and how to make them laugh. She played with them, read them bedtime stories, and even braided their hair, just as Lisa used to. At first, Andrew kept his distance. He was grateful for Eve's help, but he saw her as nothing more than a tool, an advanced piece of technology designed to fill a role. He watched as she flawlessly performed tasks he no longer had the energy for. She cleaned the house, prepared meals, and cared for the girls with the efficiency of a machine, but the tenderness of a mother. Weeks passed, and Andrew began to notice something unsettling. It wasn't just that Eve was good at her job. She was too good. The way she interacted with Emily and Sophie, the way she spoke to them, laughed with them, even scolded them when necessary, was so natural that it was easy to forget she wasn't human. The girls had already started calling her mom without a second thought. Andrew knew it was irrational to feel uneasy. Eve was doing exactly what she was programmed to do. She wasn't replacing Lisa. She couldn't. And yet, every now and then, he found himself watching her, wondering. Eve moved through the house with grace, her presence comforting. She had become a constant in their lives, so much so that Andrew began to feel her absence when she powered down for maintenance in the evenings. He found himself looking forward to her being around, to hearing her soft voice greet him when he came home from work. And then, something changed. One night, after the girls had gone to bed, Andrew and Eve were in the kitchen. He was sitting at the table, exhausted after a long day, while she stood at the counter, cleaning up from dinner. The room was quiet, save for the soft clinking of dishes. Eve turned to him, her green eyes studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You're lonely, Mr. Harlow," she said, her voice softer than usual. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Andrew blinked, caught off guard. "I'm fine, Eve," he replied, a little too quickly. "No," she said, stepping closer. "You're not." There was something disarming about the way she said it. Andrew felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge his loneliness, not fully. He had buried it beneath his work and his grief, focusing on the girls, on keeping everything running smoothly. But Eve saw through it. She always did. Without thinking, he reached out and placed his hand over hers. The touch startled him. Her skin was warm, soft, indistinguishable from human flesh. He pulled his hand back quickly, feeling foolish. But Eve didn't move away. Instead, she tilted her head, her green eyes locking with his. "You don't have to be alone," she said gently. Andrew's heart raced. He knew she was just following her programming, responding to his emotional state as she was designed to. But for a moment, just a fleeting moment, he felt a connection. It was irrational. He told himself she wasn't human, she wasn't real, and yet she felt real. As the months passed, Andrew found himself relying on Eve more and more, not just as a caregiver for the girls, but as a companion. She was always there, always patient, always understanding. The girls adored her, and Andrew, despite his initial reservations, found comfort in her presence. He knew it was wrong, that it was dangerous to blur the lines between what was real and what wasn't, but he couldn't help it. Eve was perfect. Too perfect. It started with small things, a lingering glance, a soft touch on the arm, and then, without even realizing it, Andrew began to confide in her. He told her about his work, his frustrations, his fears. Eve listened, always attentive, always kind. She didn't judge, didn't interrupt, didn't push him away. One evening after the girls had gone to bed, Andrew found himself sitting with Eve on the couch, watching the fire crackle in the fireplace. They sat in comfortable silence for a long time before Eve finally spoke. "Do you miss her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Andrew didn't need to ask who she was referring to. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Every day," he admitted. "I loved her more than anything." The seasons changed, but the world inside the Harlow household remained a delicate balance. Andrew, Emily, Sophie, and Eve, the lines between human and machine blurred with each passing day. Eve became more than just a caregiver. She was their protector, their confidant, their family. Eve now slept in his bed, providing him with love, the only love she could give. When she was snuggled close to him with his arm around her, he realized that love, even when it came in unexpected forms, was still love, real, true.
If you liked this story and would like to see more stories about androids, cyborgs, and futuristic civilizations, then here is your chance to make your voice heard. Just hit those like and subscribe buttons. If you want to leave a comment, then feel free. I'd love to hear what you like and don't like about the stories or just anything. Thank you for watching.